A very good morning to you all, Year 4. And as I've just said to 4F in their Star of the Week worship, don't tell anybody, but the rain has gone away. It's a lovely sunny morning, which makes me happy. Another thing that makes me happy is to be able to sit and read with you in the morning. So this time, we're continuing our story, but this time it's part 2, as you can see. Part 2, The Voyage of the Kitty Four. Now, obviously, all this part 1, has been written by Arthur, the dad. But as we heard yesterday, he sadly passed away. So this bit is going to be spoken in the first person, but you've got to imagine now that it's Ali who's talking to you. So Arthur was talking to you in all of that bit, but it's now Ali that's talking to you in the rest of the story. She's taking up her dad's story, if you can get your head around that. Okay? So the I now is Ali. It's not Dad. Okay? What goes around comes around. I always liked messing about with boats, and in boats too. As Dad said, I'd been doing that just about all of my life. From the Bath to the Southern Ocean. I think I was born to sail, and I mean that. So when I set out on my great sailing adventure, it was because I wanted to do it. I'd been dreaming of doing it for almost as long as I can remember. I didn't just do it because I promised Dad I would. That was only part of it. Yes, Dad had built the boat for us to sail to England together to find Kitty, and yes, it's true that I try very hard to do what I say I'm going to do, to keep my promises. So of course I went off in memory of Dad, but mostly I went because I wanted to. He was just a bloke I met on a train, the night train from Penzance to London, and we got talking, as you do. To be honest, I didn't pay much attention to him at first. I had my laptop out, I was busy writing emails to Mum and Grandpa. Besides, I didn't want to talk, I was tired. I wanted to get my emails done and then have a good night's sleep. But we just got chatting. No, that's not quite true. He started chatting, and I listened. I think I listened because he was funny, and because he was an Australian. The first Australian boy I'd talked to face in months. He rattled off his entire life story in about a minute, before the train had even left the station. He was called Michael McCluskey, born in Sydney, went to school in Parramatta, hated it, spent all the time he could on the beach surfing, left school, decided he'd go around the world searching out all the best surfing beaches he could find, came to England, to Cornwall, to Newquay, and to St Ives. Big mistake. No one told him they didn't do proper waves in England. You could find bigger waves in a teacup, he said. He'd spent the last couple of months sitting on drizzly grey beaches waiting for waves, and now he'd run out of money. He was going home to sunshine, to Australian surf, the real kind, the rolling kind, the thundering curling kind, the riding kind. You surf? He asks me. No, I tell him. I sail. Same thing? No, it's not. Have a Mars bar, he says. And that's how it all began, with an argument and a Mars bar. 6 years on, and we still argue from time to time. Not that often, but when we do, we often patch it up by sharing a Mars bar. It helps us to remember that train journey, the time that we first met. It makes us smile, and it's really hard to argue if you're smiling. I know, because I've tried. So what about you? Michael says. What about me? Well, I've told you the story of my life. Now you've got to tell me yours. You're just chatting me up, I tell him. Yes, I am. But tell me all the same, it's a long journey. He was right about that. It was going to be about 8 hours through the night, and the seats were uncomfortable, so sleeping wouldn't be easy. And besides, he was very persuasive. What happened to your arm? He says. I'd almost forgotten I had my arm in a sling. I'd already got used to it like that. It's a long story, I tell him. I'm listening, he replies, flashing me his wide white smile of surfer's smile. And you can tell me your name too if you like. I told Michael my story and my name that night because I liked him. There, I've said it, and that's the honest truth. To begin with, I thought, I'll do what he did, just rattle through my whole life story, get it over with as quickly as possible. But once I'd started, it didn't work out like that, and that was because he kept trying to draw more out of me. I began my story just as the train jerked into motion and began to groan and grind its way out of the station. As it turned out, I didn't finish until the next morning, and I think I know why I confided in him as much as I did. It was because he listened so intently, seemed so riveted by every word I said. It was like I was telling my story to a little kid at bedtime. He just didn't want me to stop, and he kept asking questions, kept wanting me to explain things more. So it wasn't just me talking. It became more of a conversation between us rather than a solo storytelling. And I had so much I wanted to show him, so much evidence, all the emails on my laptop, a transcript of Dad's story, and Dad's copy of The Ancient Mariner, both of which I'd had with me on Kitty 4 all the way from Australia. He loved the emails particularly, and he told me why too. It all became so real when he read them, he said, as if he was on the boat with me. So that's how I'll try to tell you my story then, just as I told it to Michael the first time, but without his interruptions. 2 send-offs and an albatross. Dad died just 2 weeks after I'd finally finished typing out his story. So he had his copy on his bedside table. He couldn't read it by this time, but he knew what it was all right, and he was very proud of it. The last time he was conscious, I sang him a song over and over again, till I was sure he'd heard it. London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. London Bridge is falling down, my fair lady. He didn't open his eyes, but he squeezed my hand. He'd heard it. We gave him a good Cretan send-off, the kind he would have liked, and all of us there, the whole family, and we sang our songs and danced our dances. Then we went out in a flotilla of boats, Mum and me in Kitty 4, and we sprinkled his ashes far out at sea, just as he had wanted us to do. I read a few verses from The Ancient Mariner. I knew his favourite lines, so I ended with them. He prayeth well who loveth well, both man and bird and beast. He prayeth best who loveth best, all things both great and small. For the dear God who loveth has made and loveth all. Just as I was finishing that last line, an albatross came winging over us and floated above us in the air. Dad's spirit was in that bird. I knew it, and so did Mum. We didn't have to say anything to know what the other one was thinking. As we watched it fly away, I told her about the promise I'd made to Dad, that once he was gone, I'd do the voyage we were going to do together, but do it on my own. I'd sail to England, do all I could to find Kitty, and then sail home again. I expected an argument from her. I knew how nervous and upset she'd been about the whole project, and this was with 2 of us doing it. But she just said very quietly, I know all about your promise, Ali. He told me, and besides, I know his story, don't I? He was so proud of you. You go, you do it. It's what he would have wanted. But when it's done, you come back straight here, you hear? Fitting up Kitty 4 and planning the whole trip and all the sea trials needed to test out their equipment took several months. Mum wasn't going to let me go until she was quite sure everything on board was just as it should be. Grandpa was the same. He checked and double-checked everything, and all this time Mum was beginning to search for Kitty. She surfed the net, but that got her nowhere. She sent off emails to public record offices in London and all over England. Nothing. She wrote to 1 or 2 friends who lived there asking for help. Everyone did what they could, but no one could find a trace of Kitty Hobhouse, born in London, probably in Bermondsey, at about the same time as Dad, though like him, we could never be quite sure when exactly that had been. We set up a Kitty 4 website so people could chart my progress at sea, and followed me all the way to England, and there was a link to the whole story of the search for Dad's missing sister, asking anyone who might have information about Kitty Hobhouse to get in touch. Maybe someone would read it. Hopefully someone would know something. We had hundreds of hits, huge interest, lots of good luck messages, but no one, it seems, had ever heard of Kitty Hobhouse of Bermondsey, London. Mum didn't give up. She and Grandpa used the press too. There were front page articles in the newspapers, national as well as local. Ali's epic voyage. Ali searches for long lost auntie. I did radio interviews, TV interviews. Grandpa liked the TV coverage best, of course, because the boatyard's name was up there behind me. Stavros Boats, in huge blue letters, bow to stern, the whole length of the boat, on my cap, on my wet weather gear, on just about everything. Grandpa was always there to stage the interview. He never missed a trick. Mum thought the press coverage might be our best chance of tracking Kitty down, but no one phoned, no one got in touch. No one emailed. I got to thinking about what Dad had told me when he was a bit down once, that it had all been so long ago that sometimes he wondered if Kitty had existed at all, that she could just be a figment of his imagination, that someone else could just have easily given him this lucky key, so we could be looking for a figment. As usual, Mum stayed positive. Kitty was real, she was sure of it. Kitty was as real as her key, she said. She'll keep looking while I was gone. Sooner or later something had to turn up. All through Dad's illness, she had been the same. Everyone around her only kept hoping because of what she did. Whatever made Dad feel better, she made sure we did. Most of all, he loved to see us dancing, all of us together, the whole family. Let's do it like we always do it, she'd tell us, so that he feels the joy in it. Even when he died, she was the strongest of us all. It was Mum's strength and determination that was to keep me going over the next 5 months. I could never have done it without her. Mum was my coordinator back at home on shore through email and through sat phone in an emergency. We would keep in touch every day. Any technical problems I'd let her know. She'd talk to the blokes in the boatyard and they'd do what they could to talk me through repairs and maintenance. Any injuries and health problems she'd ask the doctor. We'd thought of everything, we hoped. We were as ready as we could be, all set to go. But I wasn't happy. There was a side to all this that I was really beginning to dislike. Over the last few weeks, before I'd left, I'd become a bit of a local celebrity, and I was finding constant intrusion getting on my nerves. I just wanted to be gone, but I knew excuse me. But I knew they'd be there, and lots of them, on the day that I left. I wanted to slip away without anybody noticing, but Grandpa wasn't having any of it. He wanted me to have a proper send-off, a Cretan send-off. The press was important, he said. He was proud of his little girl, proud of Stavros Boats, and he wanted the world to know it. And what Grandpa said went. So that's what happened. I'd never seen so many cameras flashing in all of my life. This way, Ali! Smile, Ali! I showed my teeth. It was all I could manage, but that apart, it was a send-off I'll never forget. The whole family turned out. Bouzouki's played on the jetty. They danced, they waved, they cried. Everyone from the boatyard was there, along with half of Hobart, it would seem. All I wanted now was to be gone. I wanted the hugging and the tears to be over with. I just wanted to get on with it. My first big worry was the dozens and dozens of motorboats and speedboats and jet skis and yachts that were escorting me down the Derwent River out into the open sea. They were all around me, some of them very close, too close. Eyes in the back of my head would have been useful. I tried to wave them away, but they seemed to think I was waving goodbye to them, and just as I waved back even more enthusiastically. But once we were past the Iron Pot and out into Storm Bay, they all turned back, and I was on my own at last. We had a good breeze behind us, and Kitty Four was sailing like a dream. I'd always loved Kitty Four. She'd been a dream for so long, but I'd never loved her more than I loved her now. She was going to be my home for 5 months. We'd be doing this together, just her, me, and Dad, who'd built her to sail the way she did, and made me the person I was, and the sailor that I was too. I sat there in the cockpit, the sun and the spray on my face, in seventh heaven. Dad was always counting heavens in his story, so I can too, singing London Bridges Falling Down and drinking my first hot chocolate of the voyage. I was on my way. And there, I'll hold it for a moment. She's done as a description. Let's see if you can see that. Of her boat and what it looks like, what it's like from the outside, and then what it's like under the deck. There you go. And interestingly, when we move on next week, she's kind of changed the text font, perhaps because it's a diary of some description. Right, that's all. Enjoy the rest of your day. I hope the clouds stay away and the sky stays blue. Enjoy the rest of your day. Talk to you next week. Bye-bye.